Hey, what's up, everybody? We're going to be talking about a lot of different things today, nerdy things, things that some people on the X say Catholics really shouldn't do, some things that people on the X say that Catholics can do, and everything in between because yeah, like that's just where we are right now. Everyone thinks that they know exactly what people can do and what they can't do, but we're going to try to do it with fun, and we're going to show you why it's okay to do these things. I have with me Catholic Tabletop Guy. We're going to be talking about all these nerdy things that we do and that we play and spend time with our friends, enjoying that. I said that wrong, but that's okay. So we are also going to be talking about and going over some saint depictions that John has, or Catholic Tabletop Guy. I don't know if you want me to say John.
It doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter. Gone over because we did have, especially in the chat the last few times, we have gone over the illustrations for the Sacred Heart Party. Which is just kind of our fun way of saying, let's make a Catholic political party. Like, how are we going to present a piece of artwork in relation to that? It's kind of half serious. It's pointing to a Catholic party that I think should happen, but we're kind of having fun with it because it's probably not going to happen from our channel, right? Like, it's probably going to have to grow beyond that. So what do you want to talk about first? like literally anything in regards to what I just spewed out just now.
To be honest, I think what's would be interesting is the limits of what Catholics can and can't participate in when it comes to broader fantasy culture. Because some of it, walking in these spaces as somebody who's an artist and somebody who's published tabletop games, there's a lot of it's fraught with danger if you get into the wrong groups and so on. I would say especially for like young people. But
Right.
it doesn't mean that, the whole of the genre is to be cut off. Um, which I know a lot of older Catholics and other Christians, like I've been told that, my work, because it has any form of magic in it, is satanic, things like that. And so you have to just kind of watch those things.
Right.
Um,
Even though that your magic is more like properly understood, comparable to Tolkien's understanding of magic in
yeah,
the
like
Lord
fairy
of the
tales.
Rings.
Yeah,
What? Yeah, it's a fairy tale, but
right.
it's not in a sense of like, yeah, it's not like Harry Potter where you're like, for those that really push the Harry Potter angle, um, you're not saying here, this is how you cast a spell, like
Right.
outright, like right, like this is, you're not giving words for that. So, but I think this is something that is like I think you kind of hit it. It's a lot of it is older. Some of it is within our generation. Like there's some notable ones that have called out a lot of different aspects to this as being like just bad. Like this is what Catholics should not do. And like I think you brought up a very important point here, which is when you go there, when you go into like these stores, the type of people you meet, the um let's just say the culture of the local game store does create and manifest in a way that looks like a liberal dystopia. Like that's me saying
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
and I'm talking like my experience mostly comes from Michigan. So like I used to be very competitive with playing Magic the Gathering. Like that was something growing up. That was something I got really into. But I dropped it when I started seeing a lot of the red and blue hair, and the one guy that was facilitating it asked for our pronouns.
Mm.
And so it was like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, it's fun to play with people uh, in a very interesting and strategy intense game. It's not okay to then be part of a culture that is being wound up to be a particular way.
Yeah.
But
Well, and I think it's a tough balance to try uh to balance, for lack of a better word, is how much of this culture, how much are we called to be a light to this culture, and how much are we called to shield ourselves. And that's always been a balance that's kind of hard to strike. I mean, I'm a publisher, right? So I'll
mhm,
go in and hold events, and whoever wants to come to the events can come to the events. I've never turned anybody away,
mhm.
though I have had many, people with odd pronouns and people with odd persuasions show up. um I
And
think.
in regards to that, like you've sorry to cut you off, but I think
Yeah.
that's like an important point because you've actually with you selling your game had interactions that you could actually make the case is evangelical.
Right. Right. Well, it's just one, you have to just be grounded in your faith. Okay, these people, because nerd culture has always pulled people from, kind of the outskirts of society, and many of them too are basically like clinically online, right? They're just
Right.
they live in online cultures. They come out to these events and then they go back to, whatever message boards they're on all the time. And it's odd. It's almost like, um kind of like if there's a seasonal creature that comes out like in winter or something, like where you're just like, you haven't been outside in like 60 to 90 days, bare
Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah.
It's funny because a lot of these people, it's not that I mean, they're well meaning. Very often they're not like mean or rude or anything like that. But they're just confused, and it's been tough to navigate that, because you'll have things, for instance, like my game uses the term races to describe orcs and humans, and I've
Mhm.
been told that that's politically incorrect and can't be in certain stores, or um, that I can't have like sexually dimorphic races. So like we have a bird race in the game called the Teru, and they have the males, which are larger and more colorful than the females, which is how birds are. And they said, well, that's, uh, insensitive to trans people, whatever have you. And so we've been barred from stores, um, because of, not being politically correct enough. Um,
Yeah, to me, like that's ridiculous because we're if you know local game stores, it is the most ridiculous thing to ostracize the people who bring in the money. Like the people who are clinically online and spend a lot of time at the game store are typically not the ones with the money. And like I
yeah,
know that sounds really weird. Like the people who are with the ones with the money are the ones who have jobs and occasionally come in. And if they want to invest in like what's going on, they're not going to be clinically online. They're not going to be, in the game store the whole time.
sure.
Like you get what I mean? Like they're
Well,
not
yeah,
picking up
no, and
part-time jobs. Like for example, like me, I would have continued to play maybe like once every 3 months, just as an example, and bought from a particular store um, several products when it comes to Magic the Gathering if they didn't cross that line. Like if they didn't do that, I would have continued to do that and not pulled away and been like, "Yep, I'm not doing this anymore. This is
sure.
this is becoming a real problem." Because unlike me, like I don't have a game to entice people to come into. I don't have an angle that you have, which I think is a very good angle.
Mm,
But it doesn't allow for me to like I basically am walking into a lion's den that like although I may, it's hard to be put in that position and not have animosity like the second you step foot into it.
right.
Does that make sense? Like,
Well,
whereas
so
like for
for
you, it's more like you're looking at them as customers and like there's
yeah,
a like not necessarily a peer
mhm.
situation where for me it was like, okay, well, we're peers and like you're imposing this in a very weird way.
So one of the things that I'll say about it that I think is interesting. So I'll share some moments that I've had with this. I did have one guy find out that I was a Republican, and he screamed at me till I left the store, um, which was
Really? He harassed
fascinating.
you?
Yeah, because he was like, "You're a dumb hillbilly. Get out and never speak to me again." And
Is
I was
he
like,
was he the owner of the store?
"Mm-mm." No, he was just a guy that played there regularly, but he was like,
And the owner didn't do anything?
I don't think the owner was there at the time. It was one of those stores that stayed open with the staff, but he left at like 5.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like that's happened. Um, we've had different artists and so on that wanted to work with me that I worked with and then found out that they were part of the trans ideology. And then basically, so here's one of the problems that you run into. If you aren't willing to use people's pronouns, you can get in a lot of trouble. And so, one of the problems, there's an artist that I've never worked with again that did a lot of great work for us, but was insistent on me using this person's pronouns. And I said, look, I'll call you by whatever name you want to go by, but I'm not going to, call you by different pronouns.
Right.
And, you know, it just created an environment where I was waiting to get sued or something to happen. And so this person might not know why I've never called them back, and have commissioned artwork from other people. And that's just upsetting. um, I would say that most store owners are conservative, generally speaking. And most of the kind of older crowd is conservative, and they just lie. They just oh yeah, we don't really talk about politics. But the people that are more progressive will talk about politics, and you'll hear it all the time.
Yeah, they'll shove it in your face. Like, you'll be in the middle of, like, I remember, like, when I was playing, because this is the overlap I have with you on this, because I'm coming at it from a different angle, from a player playing a different card game or a different game. But, like, just how they would impose it, it just, like, they'd bring in politics on
Mm,
something that, like, okay, clearly me and you don't agree, and I'm not here to argue with you politics. I'm here to
sure.
play a game and have fun with you guys, and you're imposing a particular angle. Now, don't get me wrong, like, you should be able to talk about politics in a lot of places. However, if I pay money into a tournament, just for example, and you start bringing in politics and you start to browbeat me, or a group of you start to browbeat me, now you have a problem when it comes to, okay, well, there was an entry fee and there's a prize, there's prizes involved. We're not talking about a lot of money. We're like $5-10. And typically the prizes were like other products. And so the idea that it was okay to get browbeat politically after you've already played a game, like you've already paid into a tournament. It's like, I agree with you. They kind of um, they do add this bullying aspect, and I think we've seen that manifest in the last like 10 years spectacularly across like all levels of society.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, for sure. And then you'll just have other things too where, because I'm the maker of the game, and so like the lore, I know the lore of the game. And so what I'll do is I'll sit down with people, and they have a race in Master's Tale that's a very faith-based race
Mhm.
that can give and take faith from people. It's one of the givers, one of the sub races of the givers. And somebody said, well, I want to play a faith giver because faith is a lie. And so I can trick people into doing whatever I want because they're like atheist, and, they're
Yeah,
so edgy because they're 19 or whatever.
yeah,
And that coming into contact with the fact that like holy powers work in the game.
yeah. It
And
doesn't
I'm
make
just, yeah, I'm like, okay, you're healing by praying over people, but the concept that you're going with is faith isn't real. And it was like they couldn't make it work within the confines of the game very well. And it wasn't me like pushing it. It was just like, okay, you're a faith-based, God-given powered healer. I, I, ju- I okay, I've had people that have like tried to directly attack me because they knew I was Catholic, and so they would play faith characters in bad faith, and
Yeah.
just wish to hurt my feelings or something. Um, it, it and not again, not all these people are aggressive. That being said, I've had we take fan submissions for artwork all the time and for concepts all the time, and I've had trans people and you know uh LGBTQ whatever people present me stuff that was great, and I'm never going to go, well, because you're part of this group, you're not allowed to,
Yeah.
as long as it's not like, this thing actively promotes this.
Right.
But
Yeah,
to
you
be
only
honest,
knew that you only know that from a personal experience. You don't know that from a like their thing promotes that item.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So like the Munich Teru. Oddly enough, the bird people, one of the subraces for the bird people, it's like they look like plague doctors. They have big crow type faces,
Mhm.
and super cool concept. It was like, yeah, this alchemist thing that they're potion makers and stuff, and they look like plague doctors, and but they're literally birds, so they have big long beaks. I was like, oh, that's awesome, and it didn't matter where the source of that came from. And so I think that that's kind of the line that you have to draw, is as long as somebody's artwork and stuff is not trying to promote an agenda. And I think that's any way, right? Like, let's say somebody was, they're a Muslim, right? And they're coming to my event, and my event's like, okay, we start the game and everyone says Jesus is Lord, like it would be like, okay, I wouldn't bring that into that space, because that's not appropriate, I guess, so to
Mhm.
speak. I
Well,
think
right.
that, yeah, I think that people just think their secular values are it's like I can be like violently atheist and I don't mean violently like physically, but just like aggressively atheist at the table, but I don't view that as like a worldview. And it's like that's a worldview. That's
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
bringing
that
that
kind of
into the
that goes
game.
into what we were talking about yesterday about religious faith and how the Britannica does a very good job of explaining what faith is that Oxford Dictionary currently doesn't, and that is to have a strong conviction or an inner an inner attitude. And so that would atheists would fit that. And so the idea that it doesn't is really weird,
Right.
but like because it's one thing to, and I'll just quickly, this is like short.
No, go for it.
Um, it's one thing to deny, like as Catholics, like we deny all other religions, right? Like we say, Catholicism is the true religion. We deny Islam. We deny Buddhism. We deny a whole bunch of them, even though like smaller parts of their religion may be accurate. Just the whole as a whole, like it's wrong.
Right.
And so it's one thing to say, all right, well, positively, I support Catholicism. It's another thing to say positively, I reject all religions.
Right.
Like that is what an atheist perspective is. And it's like really annoying when they try to make it as if they're agnostic, because then at that point they're saying, well, like actually I don't know what it is. I'm just basing it off the evidence, or they start appealing to science in some misguided way. But then they start citing ridiculous philosophies to justify their perspective, but don't quite actually answer the issue. And not in every case. I don't want to say it happens in every case. There are like very intelligent atheists that argue from their point, and they give good arguments, but obviously, as the church states, natural reason can get you to that God exists, but revelation takes you the rest of the way, right? Like that's Catholic teaching. So like um there is still an element of, well, you're not using your reason appropriately if you still don't believe in God at the end of the day. Which is a very strong case, like that's clearly a very like some people would probably say extreme case, but like that's what the church says, is that we can know from reason that God exists. If you're arguing against that, like for example, those same atheists will say that we could be living in a simulation, which I think it was Joe Heschmeyer just recently pointed this out, where he's like, okay, if you believe that this is like a simulation, then you are appealing to the ordered argument, the by design argument by design, um, and that you're just saying it's a computer programmer instead of God. Like you're still given a creation argument. Like, you know what I mean? You're just making it sound all sciency, like, but not like the theology is still consistent.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think I think it's one of those things too where it's I sent you over because he was asking. Let me
Oh, are
see.
you talking about the bird people?
Yeah, I sent you over some images of the bird people because they're at various level of bird. But I mean, a
Various
lot of
level of bird. Okay.
a lot of birds actually like parrots are the ones you think of, but like lyrebirds actually have a pretty complex set of vocals that they can produce. So a lot of times when people are playing Teru, they'll actually make themselves able to speak it and hear in higher decibels than other races can. Um, because if you look at birds, they can produce like a variety of sounds. So actually, because I was worried about that too, but some of the Terus range from being very bird-like with like long beaks, etc., to basically humanoid with wings, right? So that would be the male of the base Teru race, um, and so not the Nisa. I forget
So they
what.
kind of so I've actually never looked at this, and I think this is the race that you've referenced that look like angels that people talk
Yes.
about.
So they
So
have they have a great, so this would be a great example. So in the world of Master's Tale, there are angels. I like to think of Master's Tale as if it was like in our universe, but like a different world, or if the world was made differently, or if it's another planet or something. So there are angels within the world of Master's Tale. Now, what's nice about that is there are all these stories from like ancient dwarves and orcs and so on that say, oh man, there were these angels, these winged creatures that came down and came to help us. And so the Teru as a fictional race are like, oh, that's just stories about us because we're so awesome. And so they have this kind of, godsend complex that they're here to save all the other races that are all earthly bound because they're able to fly. And so that's those are the males of the species, and then they have a sexually dimorphic female that's on. I think the other email that I sent you has them, and then the Munich Teru.
oh
Um,
man, you're gonna make me do this. Okay.
yes, because I mean, I could present my screen, I guess.
I mean, like, yeah, you can, but that's okay. Um, it's okay. Let's see if this
Yeah, the
pops up.
Teru were very hard to design. I actually had a mechanical engineer get with me on their flight. So those are the females. So they're significantly different, softer. They're about 80 pounds lighter than their male counterparts, which puts them at about 70 pounds because all their bones are hollow. Um,
Oh, going into the hollow bones. Dang.
yeah, they've got really low constitution. They're high strength, low con. Um,
All right.
yeah,
So
so that I got banned from a store for having male and females that were different.
yeah,
Yeah,
he did. He
yeah,
talked to a mechanical engineer to make sure that
they
the
could fly.
they could fly. That things are proportional and the hollow bones and such.
Yeah.
So like I guess like so all right, like we as Catholics can play these games, right? Like if we can play video games where we're essentially like, for example, Breath of the Wild. Okay, that's a role-playing game. You're playing Link, you're playing a knight, you are saving the princess and killing a bunch of pigs. Okay, so like that's like a lot of the game actually. Although the pigs look very humanoid. So um playing this, by yourself instead of playing maybe Master's Tale or, it's like Dungeons and Dragons. I'm only bringing that up because people don't, as a point of reference, everybody knows Dungeons and Dragons. Um, Unfortunately, it has a lot of demonic aspects to it. Like when I say demonic, I mean like they promote a lot of things in there that are just morally problematic.
Yeah.
Where the story itself does not lend itself to be a good story. Um, and both from a like the story itself and the what do you call it, the morality that's promoted. Like it's very much a gray, like
Yeah.
everything's gray. And um
And I think one
and
of the problems too is paganism is so hard to write without getting too pagan. Like
right, and
it's
they
just yeah, like and it's just hard to write in general. Like I've never liked it because you can have things like vampires are vampires are scared of holy magic, but there's like 90 or 100 or 3,000 gods and some of them are good and evil and it's like okay, well then how
which
do you
well,
have a paladin? Like, how does that make any sense at all?
yeah, and that's what I've never understood is how can you have good and evil if good and evil is on a spectrum of like I think a great example was like World of Warcraft. You have holy, and then you have undead, and then you have like um demonic.
Mm,
I can't remember exactly what it's called. The one where it splits shadow. There we go. So you have like holy, undead, shadow, and then you have like four other things. And like holy is just simply an aspect of the world as opposed to being something that is divinely given, which completely runs contrary to the whole understanding of holy.
well,
Like
right,
when you
because it
like
wouldn't
when I
affect
first
the
started,
undead in a different way at all.
right, and like when I started playing World of Warcraft, and like that was when I was like 16. Like there were crosses on the ground, like like they were using Christian imagery like throughout the entirety of the thing. And so like the idea that they like did a 180 on it's like, oh, actually this is like a pagan thing. Like it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. Like your universe had to have come into existence in some capacity. And like you're not really spelling it out in a pagan way because like you
Right.
said, you can't do that unless it gets super pagan. And
Well,
so it's like,
and what's funny about it too is that the I've never understood where the dividing line between gods are, and most pagan religions that have a pantheon don't. So it'll be like, this guy's the god of archery, and this guy's the god of war, and this guy's the god of swordsmanship. And I'm like, okay, that's all sound like the same dude. It's like, no, they're different. It's like, okay, well, are swords and daggers? Like, how long is the sword before it gets a new god? Like it's just
right.
it's that type of thing where it's so make it up by you go and kind of fly by night. And if you're interested, I can give you how I built out my worlds, but and the magic systems in it and how they kind of cohere. But yeah, no, the pagan system is man, it's just all over the place. And it's honestly it's kind of silly because modern artwork will try to like fit it into our paradigm. Like if you go watch Disney's Hercules, Hades is basically the devil, but like
Yep.
he's never viewed that way in the
Yep.
original mythology.
Like he's just a dude in charge of the dead.
Right, yeah. Like
Literally, he's
it's
just
just a day job.
very, yeah. And I mean, the closest thing that gets to him being a problem is when he steals the, or he doesn't so much steal as like, oh, like this woman ate an apple in the ground. So the daughter of Autumn has to deal with the fact that her daughter goes underground every 6 months. I forget her name. Uh, my kids just read it because I think it's important that the kids read like historically, like um, the Greek myths
Sure.
to understand in relation to like what we have as Catholics, where it's like you see how all of this is just like an abstraction. Like
Right.
that whole thing about Hades is supposed to explain why winter happens. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, Persephone, thank you. That whole thing is it's supposed to explain why winter happens. Um and then when you get into like Nyx, and when you get into all the other gods.
Damien, we're talking about why paganism doesn't work in games because it's a little silly.
I walk away and now I have yeah. So it's basically we're taking like a slight detour into like why paganism doesn't work in games, and we're just using examples of real world paganism and how the real world paganism doesn't make sense, and how like you can't do that in a game like effectively. Yep, that's the thing. All right, so let me I get what you mean. A show that I saw had angels, fallen angels, and then demons. Like that doesn't even make sense. Like,
yeah, they're all buddies.
Yeah, I mean, like it just you have to like this idea of well, we can just make it up because we're making a story is I think kind of like if you're going to use imagery or you're going to justify like explaining something, like you at the end of the day still need to explain how they come into existence. Right? Like you need to justify their existence in the world, or else it's just this superficial nonsense. And if you're going to say, for example, Dungeons and Dragons has like decades of this crap, right? Like their story is not simply isolated in one area. It's a pretty lengthy story, and it's been built on, and then you have the different editions and all that fun stuff. And now, like there's crossovers and other things like movies. Like we just saw like Dungeons and Dragons the movie, which actually wasn't bad. I thought it was pretty funny. um uh and I laughed especially hard about the paladin because I typically play the paladin, and the reaction they did to the paladin being like boring and stuck by the rules is exactly how I play. So like I was that for me it was like yep, that's how I've played this game. But like the story itself though is like again a problem, and it's built on over decades. And like if you're going to do that, you need to have an origin story. Like if you're going to make this meaningful, not in a way of religion but of substance, where you're just like, okay, is this coherent, does this make sense? Like your point exactly, there's this holy damage that happens, but who is this appealing to? Where is this coming from? And why
Sure.
is it damaging this god's power as opposed to that god's power? Or this, like why is this all happening? Because I do think there needs to be a coherent like understanding there, or else it just breaks down and pulls you out
Yeah.
of it.
I think on the other hand, though, too, and this was just how I handled it personally, but I was never afraid of doing things that weren't like theologically perfect either. And I think that that's another thing that that artists get into, especially with kind of the religious background, is when they're creating a fantasy world, they're trying to, like, I mean, for instance, like Tolkien has like dwarves that are kind of like misformedly created when creation wasn't supposed to happen, and I would never consider Tolkien's work like heretical. Um, but yeah, like so, like we had things like the Fell, and the Fell were like demons took human form, and people were seduced by them and created these offspring, and that's kind of the Nephilim. Like if you really squint at it, maybe, but like I would say it's
Right.
pretty theologically problematic. But it creates these evil people that's their ancestors have basically like cursed them, and so they have to be actually like baptized by this exorcist named Murg who brings them back into the fold. And so it still creates that holy and evil and good and evil and so on paradigm. It doesn't step on that, but I would not think there are like half demons running around our world or something like that, something
Well,
to
right,
that
like
extent.
that's and that's with like fantasy, but like we can understand like half demons being something where it's like um what is it, like people who do incredibly evil acts, right? Like
Yeah,
so, and then those that have a potency to do incredibly evil acts but then choose not to and then move
right.
away from that. So it's like like I think a lot of people when they look at these games, they're like, oh well, like this is like demonic because you are being these people, and it's like no, it's symbolism.
Right.
Like it's
Well,
a
and the Fel
allegory.
aren't playable either. So I mean,
Well, yeah.
right. Um, yeah. So that would be. It's like I've never done an undead race for a lot of reasons. It's
Hmm.
like I just don't touch that. I don't see enough interesting things to make a playable race that's undead, and a lot of people get on me for that. But
Well, because like, what would be the enemy of undead? It would be life.
yeah,
Like, and
yeah.
that doesn't quite make a lot of sense in the universe you've created.
Right. Yeah. And so, there's you also need to know like where your line is. Like,
Mhm.
so like I had somebody who did want to introduce like pagan gods into the writing, and I was like, no, no, we don't do that. Or they wanted to introduce the undead. They're like, oh, this guy's undead. And I'm like, no. And it's just, necromancy is always evil in the game, and it's like the apex evil of the game is to raise a corpse and like puppet it. And so
Yeah.
doing a playable race like that, I never liked it.
Well, right, and I think that's when you're watching Dungeons and Dragons the movie, they actually have a whole scene where they bring up a guy and do necromancy.
Right.
And I'm like looking at this and I'm like, this is like the only part of the movie I actually don't like.
Yeah.
Because it's just I fundamentally have a problem with how we like our cultural attitude towards the dead, where it's treated in this kind of like whimsical, like annoyingly pagan way,
Right.
where it's like, okay, well, we're just gonna scatter his ashes. I'm sure he really wanted this, even though his will doesn't, you know, say this at all. Or like the kids just choose some new age bull crap. And like this idea of reverence for those that have passed on, like proper reverence to a person who is passed on, like that is just missing. And
Yeah.
I'm like, this is November, right? Like, so November is um the month about praying for dead people. And
Right.
I just realized we didn't pray for the dead person today in our prayers during our rosary today. So my wife that's watching, please remember that when we after the fact. Because we have like a month thing where every single day we have a particular person who we know who has died, and we pray for them during that day.
Yeah.
And
So,
so,
so to answer there's a comment
yeah, which one? Which one?
saying you can't play an evil slash villainous character. Those are two different things. And I think they're dramatically different.
Well, remember this is a
Um,
play, so but yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. In a play, yeah.
yeah.
No. So whenever I say, okay, we're gonna do like a role playing game, and we're gonna have a character, you can have a character that's villainous. You can play a villain. I mean, I run the game. I play villains all the time, and I'll play evil characters all the time. To make that a playable race, and not that if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, I want to play," somebody who's a Fel, I wouldn't be completely against it necessarily, but
Hmm.
normally the idea behind the fantasy almost falls apart. And I find it very hard to make it cohere, because what you'll have, say like in a D&D game, is it'll be like, "Hi, I'm a holy paladin, I'm a human, and I'm a representative of whatever god or light or whatever they have." And then, "Hi, I'm a tiefling. I am one step from hell. Let's go on an adventure together." And it's like they don't just kill each other. Like,
Well,
you
so
have.
here's the funny thing. I actually did that with my brother. I was a paladin, and
Mhm.
he's like, I'm a rogue. And then he openly stated that he's evil chaos. And I'm like, roll to hit him over the head with my hammer.
Right.
And they're like, why? I'm like, I'm a paladin. Like this is totally in character. Like he's an evil, he has come out and said he's evil chaotic.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I have to
No,
do this.
those two characters, and I've had people play self-serving characters before, and
Mhm.
characters that borderline on villainous. But whenever you play an evil character,
Oh, okay. She's referencing the people saying D&D is satanic because you do magic, and it's like saying you can't play the
Oh,
vanilla.
okay, yeah. No,
Got
no,
it.
no, no. That
Okay,
makes
that makes a lot more sense because that's
yeah.
what I thought you were saying.
Well, because like the magic in Lord of the Rings are prayers. I mean, a lot of the magic in Master's Tale are like prayers to God, right? Ordered Caster, that whole school is actually just that. They actually have like tomes of wisdom, and they call it scripture, and they open scripture to create their powers. So, I mean, there's definitely some of that, but no, the two types of characters that I hate seeing in games is one, I'm evil. I want to watch the world burn. Great. It's going to be a boring campaign. You're going to do something dumb all the time. The second is, as Deadpool got very popular, the people that are trying to play Ryan Reynolds in the game, which is, lol, I'm so random. Isn't it funny that the tavern keeper was talking to us and I knocked over a beer and cut a backflip? And it's like, no, it isn't. It's as annoying as it would be if you did it in real life. Like you're
Yeah.
not funny. Um,
Well,
and
it's
and
kind of like when people like it's kind of like the Family Guy effect,
right,
where Family Guy pulls it off because they have a particular formula. Like this isn't just it's not random. It's actually not random. It appears random, but it's not random. And people try to replicate that. And so the same thing with Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool. He did something, it has a formula, but you don't know what that formula is, so it just looks random to you. And so you just try to mimic it, and you come off as being very predictable. And it's really funny. like it's counterintuitive to like what people like those people like what those people are thinking.
the chaotic Catholics would be early Franciscans. I'm just saying.
Well, so I guess I don't know as much. So this guy Brendan Lyle, in D&D's defense, the 3-point alignment in basic expert is pretty theologically sound: law, neutrality, and chaos. I guess I would just argue. I guess I would ask, from those three, what is bestowing or like giving the law, right?
Right.
Like law, like who's giving that law, who's going against that law, and who doesn't care. And so, like, I guess just because you can, like, for the sake of, what do you call it? Like, I wouldn't say that that's like theologically sound. I would say that that's something that you do to help a person who's playing the game understand how to play the character. Like,
Right.
for example, if I wanted to do Darth Vader, he's evil and lawful. Like, he's an evil, lawful character.
Right.
Because he has a creed that he follows, but he's evil. And Obi-Wan Kenobi, for example, would be good, lawful. And so, like, just as a counter, like, clearly they're both Jedi, and they both, I'm just using that as a paradigm. Like, it's really easy to understand that. I just pulled, like, but the religion isn't explained in that aspect.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Well, and
just
it's
that's how
it's
you
really just more
understand.
like character motivation, and I think it's just
Yep.
writing down what your character's goals and motivations are. Because, and I do think that people struggle with this a little bit, and this is something that I think is a major problem within the tabletop community that I see. And this is going to get into a little bit of a heavier subject, but there was a guy that I met one time that basically said,
Did you read this?
"No, what is it?
I
I
just
really."
realized that this stream is the perfect one to watch while I do my weekly chore of grinding. I could not write a better joke.
That's awesome. I hope that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Um,
My wife is a Discord
Ye
mod for D, and she calls that chaotic
yes,
stupid
that's
or chaotic dumb.
it's so annoying. Oh my gosh. And the worst thing is that they really think they're funny and the rest of the table just stares at them.
Eye rolls for days.
Right.
Just eye rolls.
Yeah, that's the other thing is when somebody says, "I see a valuable item." Well, I try to steal it. What do I roll? It's like, okay, let's go ahead and figure out a way to kill your character, please. Um, but
We're gonna separate you from the table. That's
right,
what we're gonna do.
right.
So before we go any further, if you could like and share this or comment, that would be helpful. That's my like 5-second pitch. Okay. Go on.
Yeah. So anyway, no, one of the darker things that I saw with this though, um, is there was a guy who was talking to me and he said, "Well, I play D&D and tabletop games and video games because my life is terrible and I'm divorced and I want to go to work and then come home and not think about things because it's escapism." And I never want my game to be that ever. Um, and I know for some people it probably is. Um, yeah, no, I'm not going to give examples or anything like
Oh no,
that.
no, it's not you. They're using for who they're talking about, like chaotic Catholic.
Oh, okay,
No, no,
yeah,
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 that's for the chat because I want to be
yeah.
careful. I don't want them to just do.
Like whenever they have like instead of saying their name, just say like a like they do like generic brands. Like it'll be like um, oh, it's not Lay's chips, it's Leo chips or whatever, and it looks exactly the same. Um, no, but anyway, no, I think there's a major escapism problem in the community that I
Yes.
see all the time where people are like, well, my character wouldn't get hurt like that or whatever. And it's like, this is like a stage play that you're part of, that you're having fun with and playing your character, right? Is this like real to you? Are you okay? Do you think
Right.
that this is, and like I'll have, and we call them power gamers, but it's like characters that gosh, they just struggle. Um, they struggle to fail or they see themselves as the character. Yeah, no, escapism isn't bad. And I don't know the word to use for it because in and of itself, when you're saying escapism, it's like I'm escaping reality. And I think for
Yeah,
some
yeah. I'm
people
going
that's
to a movie
really
to do it. Well, yeah, because like we do this for like going to movies. Like we're watching something that is not real, but it maybe will tell us something. Like we're learning something or experiencing something. We're not thinking about the mundane aspects of our life at that moment, but
sure.
that doesn't mean that we're like checked out of reality.
Right. And you
Like in the
definitely have people that's their life and it is absolutely heartbreaking.
and I would
Um
and I would think that like when especially when D&D had like really negative reviews, right? Like really negative reviews because people were being accused of occult stuff and a number of things. I would actually have to say like without looking at the evidence because I haven't like a lot of this is sporadic and there were individual cases that this actually came up, but I haven't looked at the evidence, but I would think that what we saw then is what we're seeing now, just at a greater degree, where people are appealing to escapism because their life sucks. And they
yeah.
don't want to like deal with the fact that their life sucks, so they're just staying in a game and they're taking up the persona of that that
Yeah.
that person. And like I mean, that is idolatry. That is a
Right.
form of idolatry, but like it is definitely something that um manifests in a way that is harmful to them and to others. And so
Well,
like
and what's
yeah, go ahead.
interesting too, so this is I have a weird cross section here because um I also train in boxing. I do amateur boxing. And so whenever those two worlds collide very often is you'll have these like young men that come to our table that are like really out of shape or whatever and but they're like really into the action and fighting and whatever and I'm like, "Hey, do you want to actually like learn how to do this?" And you'll run back and I'll run pads with them and all that kind of stuff. And it's very I think these things can lead to healthy things. I think playing a hero can lead to a healthy mindset. I think that you can look at a world in which you're making things better for the common man and it can lead you to good things. And I've seen that happen. It's I think it's good to imagine yourself as a hero standing against a dark world and what that person that's maybe better than you would do. I think it also helps people with social interactions to for people that have major social anxiety to play characters that are not them. So there's that layer of separation. I've seen a lot of people work through a lot of stuff with that. There's a guy who runs a program for veterans where they get together and work through PTSD with tabletop games, which is fascinating. So there's a lot of good that can come from it. But I would say in general, a lot of this stuff, a lot of people that are in that community are looking for a way to get out of their lives.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that point. And then I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to bring this up because Brandon says law, neutrality, and chaos are essentially cosmic factions rather than personality types. I mean, I wasn't saying they were personality types. I'm saying that those three are used to help the player themselves understand, not the other way around. Like that book may appeal to certain theology, but it's the idea that like it still draws back to paganism, which like you look at, for example, there's lots of gods of the sky. Like from the Greek pantheon, that's Zeus. There's lots of gods of the dead for the Greek pantheon, that's Hades. Like there are always going to be certain archetypes that are ultimately the function of those. And for a game owned by Wizards of the Coast that directly appeals to people playing the game, several years later, like it makes sense that they would do that, but like
I mean,
I don't know.
I'm interested in the book. I think it's interesting that
Yeah,
there's
I mean, just for
what the
at the
designer had
very
into my mind.
yeah,
I
and
love
thanks for
the latest comment that came in from Starskim.
well, one second. I just want to say thanks
Yeah,
for
yeah.
clarifying this, Brandon. We do appreciate it.
I don't appreciate it, Brandon. I was mad that you
Hey, his name
commented.
is Brendan. There's an E there.
Oh, okay. I
So
purposely mispronounced it.
okay.
I'm
I did
totally
not
kidding.
remember. I did not.
I'm totally kidding.
And then
I have never done that in my life. When I say run the pads, I'm holding pads and they're punching at me.
oh, you're talking about boxing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So but
Well, you get two first names, man, and they're both wrong. It looks like Brandon Kyle, and it's Brendan Lyle.
hey. Well, in a very weird way, I might be related to that kid. I don't know.
Oh my.
My grandfather's name is Lyle. So I might be related to him. I honestly have no idea. I don't know where he lives. So
Okay, so before we get too far in, because I got little kiddos and they're gonna start needing to go to bed.
sure.
The Sacred Heart Party image that I
Oh yeah,
sent
yeah.
you over.
So let
You
me
guys are incels. Let's chat.
I mean,
You have 5 kids and I have 2, and we're involuntary celibates. I don't know what happened, where our lives went wrong.
yeah, like your crib is quite literally behind you.
Yeah,
like it, um
when boxing and GMing collides, that should be a more regular thing. While I'm GMing, I should fight people out back.
so this is what everything on the back end looks like. If you're noticing, I just can't make this I'm explaining. Yeah, I can't make this take the full image. um like that's as big as I can blow it up, but
You failed.
that is St. Andrew with the hammers.
Or is it St. Anthony or St.
Or I'm
Andrew?
sorry, St. Anthony. My bad. No, that
Yeah.
was me. St.
Okay.
Anthony, Hammer of Heretics.
So what he said to me was Saint Anthony is the Hammer of Heretics. Just draw him as a fictional character, and so I'm pretty sure Saint Anthony didn't have the build of a 6'5" jack dude, but um,
But I mean, with respect, right? Like
oh, it's
you're
pretty
not
sick,
embellishing anything unnecessarily, right?
right?
So, I mean, except for the hammers, like you're,
Yeah, those things look like they weigh about 45 pounds, if not
yeah,
more.
and he's
I mean, they
just
were
one
absurd.
handing it. he's just
Yeah,
one.
he's taking out demons with the power of the Lord. I was gonna have him like stepping on a demon. I didn't have time, so I was like, okay, I'll just draw him. Just
Well,
drawing
because
him
in terms
standing.
of like when you're fighting, so you got some praise, some.
That's awesome. Thank you.
It looks great. Um,
See, I'm
but like
thinking about doing saints like this though. Like,
with
how cool would it be to have like Therese of Lisieux with like a bow, like shooting the devil.
well, right, because like I think that's really important because like yeah, Saint Anthony is Hammer of Heretics. Let me see.
Yeah, he's got those big steel toe boots.
Anthony Hammer of Heretics. Sorry, I'm checking Hammer.
He does not look like this man. I mean, the haircut is somewhat the same, and I only
So yeah,
found one image
I
of him bearded.
so like because like remember our enemy is not the heretics, right? Like the enemy is the devil.
Yeah,
and
those are
the
some
devil is
devil
causing
crushing hammers.
division through heresy. So right, like and like when people are like, "Oh, he's gonna beat the crap out of Martin Luther," like only to wake him up, okay? Only to wake him up, not to kill him, not like like it's yeah, I think a lot of the times when we think of like enemies in spiritual warfare, we think of the people, and like St. Paul like points out it's not actually the people, right? It's principalities, powers, it's demons who are much more powerful than those people. Even those people running the country being inspired by demons. Um, I'm not going to be specific on who, just that there's some, and that they have, influence
Yeah.
from the devil.
So Doan Pool.
Oh,
Um,
Joanne Poole.
Catholicism in any sense of the word would be totally against role playing games. How do you get around this? Then by extension, like John Paul II as an actor would be a sinner. Um, Anybody who acts in anything
Yeah.
would
So
be
like
sinning.
you'd have
Um,
to make the argument that like pretending to be something for the sake of a game is
or
somehow
entertainment, yeah, would be
yeah.
sinful.
Like because like you're like for example, if I'm pretending to be like let's just say let's go with a 1500 example. I'm pretending to be a troll and I'm playing with my kids about going over a bridge and I'm
You're a
chasing them.
Satanist.
Like I mean like that I mean that happened like those games happen. Like it's really I guess okay. So Doan Pool. If you want to like explain in more detail, I
Yeah.
think it'd be good for us to understand because right now you're basically like from our understanding, pretending to be something seems to be the argument that you're saying, and that it doesn't seem
Yeah.
that's not substantial enough.
Yeah.
So we want to understand. We just really want to.
Yeah, we're not
So
trying to
please,
like gotcha or anything.
yeah, we're not trying to gotcha. Like we want to have a back and forth about it. It's just a matter of we also don't want to like pretend that that's all you've got to substantiate that.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I think doing more saint images like this, because it's something that I hadn't seen. They have like a yeah, that's very true. Um, a lot of the saint images, and I think it's out of respect, right?
Yeah, the
Um,
armor of God. Like you put
right.
on the armor of God.
Well, no, but what I mean is, I feel like a lot of people, whenever they're producing saint images, are um very respectful of the person, and therefore they want to portray them in a very accurate and holy way. And I think it's like having fun with it in the same way that there's like the epic president art where like George Bush is like riding a shark down into battle with like twin guns. And it's just awesome. Like it's like, man, George Bush is like, it's just people who are fans of him made this thing. I don't I think that as long as you understand that St. Anthony didn't drag around 45-pound sledgehammers to battle heretics, um, and probably didn't look like this in the sense of like his body type. I think it's just more like this is what he looks like spiritually. Now, I think something that would be disrespectful if you're doing this art is like, I don't know, drawing them in like a seductive way or drawing them in like an impure way or, you
Right, which
know,
is why yeah, which is why I brought up like you have the weapons and they could say, you don't have any inscriptions on them, but those hammers could be um like uh, symbolic of particular prayers or particular devotions. And then
yeah.
like obviously the armor of God is clearly a reference to what St.
Yeah,
Paul
yeah,
referenced. Yeah.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure does an anime style Jesus. I've only seen pictures of it, so I don't know the context that it's in, but and then Sakurai, the guy who does Smash Brothers, has confirmed that Captain Falcon's powers come from the power of his belief in Christ.
Right.
so he can punch fire through the power of believing Christ, which is just, I mean, that's just amazing. It makes
I
me
mean,
happy every time I play the character now. Because Ganondorf's like a dark version of him, and so he's punching evil with the power of Christ.
so Saint Therese played Saint Joan of Arc in a play, and then there's some of the best artwork that I've ever seen regarding the saints was an anime style icon of the Virgin Mary.
That's what I was responding to. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I just
Yeah,
wanted
yeah,
to. And then, like I do think this is something like okay. Before I mention it, like I remember doing confirmation class and like helping with a confirmation class when I was in my mid 20s, and I'm 37 now, so like mid 20s, 13 years ago, and I was trying to help with the kids, and I asked, to get a particular mindset about their confirmation, and I said to the priest, I asked, "Hey, like, is it do you think I should just emphasize like this is you taking up your armor, your and like you're fighting for Christ in the spiritual battle?" And it was devastating because he said no.
yeah.
And it was like and the more I've gotten into the historical aspects of the faith, the more I mean, like again, quite literally, St. Paul in his epistle says to have that mentality. And to look at it that way, like we deal with demons, like and
Oh
and
yeah. Put on the
and yeah,
armor of Christ. The word of God is the sword of the Lord. It's very, and I mean the images of angels with swords of fire.
right.
Um, I'm gonna
And so
be back in 2 minutes, but keep going.
yeah, sure. I'll follow up with imagine being Saint Therese, and so this is what I was leading into is imagine being Saint Therese on your deathbed, receiving the worst temptations from the devil as a last ditch effort to claim your soul, and saying it's a bit late for that, and dying as a saint. Like that's totally a warrior mentality, right? Because you're fighting for God, like, and I mean it's not like it is a warrior mentality, but it's very much one of conviction, right? Like it's very much one that promotes the understanding that I'm on my side. You're not going to move me from my side. Um, and I think in a lot of cases we excuse me. Um, I think in a lot of cases we actually no. I'm going to go back to that. I like whatever. Um, he's got an empty seat, and I don't want you just looking at the empty seat. I'd rather you look. But yeah, like we too often try to make oh my gosh, what am I trying to say? Like we
It was
make
happy
it
screen
we
time.
try to be like humble about it, and it's like, oh yeah, we're just wearing the white cloth. And I'm like, okay, well, is the white cloth the armor of God? Like, I mean, is that the type of mentality you want to deal with? Like, especially in our age today, right? Like our age today, like you have people going to like Andrew Tate because they think it's masculine. It's
Right.
incredibly masculine to be like St. Francis, St. Thomas Aquinas. Like a number of those men were incredibly masculine in all of the right places. They weren't like weak either. And so like we have this mentality of like, well, we need to look like we like don't build up our muscles, that we don't know how to defend ourselves, and
Yeah,
that we're
no,
like utterly and totally reliant on the
that drives
God
me crazy. It drives me
in the
crazy.
way of your volume's a bit weird. Just
No. Oh, am I too loud or too soft?
you're like not close enough.
Better.
Yeah, that's way better.
Okay,
But like
sorry, my
we're
cord got tied up.
no, it's
Um,
fine. But like
no,
we're
that's a, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but I mean, you and I have talked about this so often. Is there was I think a very well-meaning religious brother that told me, well, all working out and athleticism is just vanity, and it was like, no, like it that's 100% needs to be a thing. I will have a minigun angel doom slayering his way through demons. 100%. That's amazing. No, yeah, I mean it because I got into boxing and combat sports like way late in life, and it has been fantastic for me. Um, and that's yeah, anybody who's like, oh, these are like blood sports, or you shouldn't learn how to defend yourself, or because meek is to know how to use a sword and keep it sheathed. You don't
Yeah,
need to
like
fight, but you need to you want to be you don't want to be you want to be a warrior on a farm rather than a farmer in a war. Um,
right.
and that's just as a man. And that's not to say that everybody needs to learn how to fight or anybody needs to, I don't want to besmirch anybody who doesn't approach masculinity in that very specific
Well,
way.
well,
Um,
I would also say from a standpoint of this appeal to men. So like I know we're just as a draw into it, like this appeal to men, like the images we have of priests right now, like when you look at Father James Martin, is that masculinity? Like, and I know I'm breaking my rule that I said in chat, but like I'm not talking about like a game or evil, but like in terms of like I don't
I'll give you okay.
like
So I'll give you a reverse example
okay.
I have a friend coming into the faith right now. He's a mortician and he was a state champion kickboxer. And he and I have sparred a couple of times and been wanting him to come into the faith. And he met with a priest, and this priest, super athletic, super manly, super driven in his faith, brought
Mhm.
him into RCA, challenged him. This priest benches 315. Um, and it's like your priests can be men and not just men like, oh, they happen to be male. It's like, no, your priest. There's a priest that I know that plays basketball phenomenally well. There are priests I know that run marathons. There are priests I know that are power lifters. And it's not to say that, they're not like competing at the highest level, but it's like,
Right. But
you
they're
know,
keeping their body in shape. They're because like I would say like you have someone like Father Mike Schmidt is an incredible like a great example of a of a priest who's taking care of his body, of his temple, not just spiritually, but physically as well.
I think you'll like this latest comment that just came in. I think it's about perfect.
Too many priests going for the fun uncle role instead of father. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely think so.
Yeah.
And then they're the ones that bring you like into like movies and they're like, "Hey, I'll hide a whole bunch of candy underneath my jacket." Like things you're not supposed to do with your kids in the movie theater and then, bring the candy in. So, um I'm not going to say whether or not I did that, but with my kids, but that's a different topic. Yeah, like our priest is a blacksmith. Father Eric's a blacksmith. Like when Mandy was getting rid of her pagan stuff, he was melting it. Like he was doing all the appropriate things, that he as a priest can do, but like he was literally bringing it in like
You
I
got
don't
some
remember.
Leviticus action going on there. I like
Yeah,
it.
so it was like pretty cool. Um right.
Well, and I'll tell you this too, and this is specific to combat sports, but I think it applies to anything. When you share the ring with somebody and go into like sparring or like hard sparring, like there's a guy who's like knocked me out that's like I now am like on a first name basis with that dude and like know his kids and everything. And I know it sounds weird because you would assume like, oh, that would make you distant from him. And it's like, no, when you're willing to put your trust in somebody and they're willing to put their trust in you and you push yourself to the physical edge against that person, there's a camaraderie that forms there that I haven't really found in anything else.
Right.
And when I'm talking to this guy who's converting about faith, he's like, oh, well, yeah, well, you're a man, John. Like I've hit you in the face and you're okay. So like I take your opinion more seriously than say somebody who might be trying to sell me something, Now,
Well, it's the whole idea of like you will like you're telling me something and I've quite literally already hit you in the face and you're
right,
still saying something to me that's important even though
right.
I
And
may not like it.
yeah, and you're not scared.
Yeah.
And it helps with a lot of other things. I think it helps with self-confidence. It helps with a ton of stuff. Um, dudes being dudes.
I mean, yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly
how
what it
did
is.
this turn from the nerd podcast to like
Well,
I'm doing fun because
because
it's all connected.
it is. Yeah, because like your ability to say you want to play fantasy. I love playing a paladin. Why? Because like I'm just using this as an example. Like I love playing a paladin because it allows me to help me push like the fantasy version of how I really am in life. And I know it's like weird because, like, obviously Catholicism has rules, it has laws,
Hmm.
and a paladin in a fantasy world pushes that, right?
Sure.
Like, it's not just simply following the law per se. Like, there's a certain structure in place, but there's also the ability to act a certain way. And so, like, it allows you to the creativity to kind of experiment in that aspect. And so, like, I haven't done like what is it? I haven't done D&D more, like I've only done it like 3 times. But like those instances where I've done that, it has helped me understand certain perspectives that I've then applied in the real world in regards to like talking to people. So like it's not like it's like I don't want to give the impression that this is something where you're it's a one and done and you just drop everything. Because like I do think that you can pull really rich understandings from a fantasy setting. I think it is like your ability to aspire and think about, envision like the future, like even though it's again in a fantasy setting, like it allows that creativity to manifest in a way that when you come back to the real world, in the sense like where you're not playing the game anymore, but you're like working through your life, that it'll pop up. But like that's also my personal experience. Other
Sure.
people I know, they just play it. They're like it's a mechanism for them just to play.
Sure.
But for
Damien,
me, like
to answer your
yeah,
question, is going to the range and shooting, obtaining the same manliness as punching someone in the face. Um, so this is what I would say about punching people in the face. And this is as somebody who's done it about 2-ish years now. It's not the punching someone in the face that makes you manly. It's it's the control, right? When you're sparring, you're controlling yourself to a degree, right? You're not hitting as hard as you can. They're not hitting as hard as you can. It's very uh it's manhood. It's almost manhood personified. It's like strength but controlled. Um and I think that's what makes it masculine, because you'll have guys that come in there that just swing at you. They go for the fence, right? They're trying to knock you out to like prove something, and you
yeah,
never spar with them again, right? Because
yeah.
it's like, are you here to learn and get better, or are you here to prove something? And the guys that I know that are the manliest men, they have a guy right now treats me like a lamb. He's 235 and 5'10", and he's solid muscle, got a six pack. That dude could put me through a wall, and he never has. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
that's the manly part of it. It's not the, can I go and wail on somebody as hard as possible? I don't think that you were insinuating that, but I just want to kind of make that
No, yeah,
understanding
yeah,
clear.
yeah. um, so like feminine, like heroic femininity. So someone asked Starskim about heroic femininity. I'm just gonna let the women deal with that, and not really touch it because we're talking about manly stuff. And yeah, I think the whole idea of like bringing it back to Catholicism and being like, all right, well, priests can be more than what they like give the impression of. Like, like our modern day understanding, like all I was trying to get at was with your depiction of St. Anthony here, that the modern day understanding of like how a priest should look is like for a lot of people a limp, maybe like a limp, skinny or fat guy.
Yeah.
And like unfortunately that's just how where we're at right now. I know a lot of like, my priest is a blacksmith. Um uh he's very, he's fit, and it's like I'm really glad to know that at least in my archdiocese there's a lot of young priests that look like that. Like they're coming up and they don't um like they don't have thin arms and a fat belly. Like they look fit. They look like if they had to act that they could act in a way that they could, I guess. Let's see. I need to give some context to that. So uh like where we go to mass, it's not exactly like the safest in the sense of like the surrounding area. and the crime rates. And so going there, if I had like a limp wristed or a fat priest there, I actually wouldn't feel safe. I wouldn't feel
Yeah.
okay with that. But with Father Eric, like that's different. And there's a reason for that, because he himself is a man, you know, obviously when he's doing mass, I don't expect him to all of a sudden like whip out like some sort of weapon and defend the entire congregation as someone's like
That would
assault.
be pretty cool.
I mean,
No, I'm
it
just
would
messing.
be
Go
pretty
ahead.
cool, but it's like I don't expect him to do that. But what he does with his example is he draws men to be like that. And
Yeah.
so like like the fact that he draws other men, and like, being there for like the last 7 years, like I've seen those other men come in and they're not like super skinny, like no muscle guys. They're like men with families that, they may have a belly, like I have a belly, I'm not going to pretend I don't. Um, but like if I had to act,
Men
I
can be huggable. It's okay. You can be huggable.
don't give my wife any. No, I need to lose weight. Okay. It's not okay I have that. But it's this idea of like, he draws men to action. And that's like the type of that's the type of priest you want. Not just to spiritually, but to physically as well. Like, you know, even although I'm not going to give this impression that he like promotes this like you got to be a manly man type persona.
Yeah. No,
He
for
just
sure.
he just acts out, right? Like that's how he is. Like I am your spiritual father. I'm going to lead you spiritually. That is my main focus. And then you know, he practiced what he preaches in terms of prudence and not being gluttonous and all this other stuff. So, or at least from what we can see. So and that I think is like really good. Whereas like I know there are other priests that, like I said, like they're pretty round, and it's really weird.
Yeah.
um
And we had a priest. He died, I want to say in his late 50s, because from obesity. We had a
mhm,
priest in the Alexandria area, and it was sad because he would have been around, and
yeah,
so those serious health things are real, you know. Yeah, I mean, for me, I was like pre-diabetic, hypoglycemic pre-diabetic. So like when I go to confession, I'm like, hey, I fell off my diet and I'm not going to be around for my kids if I keep doing that.
mhm,
I think your health is, I mean, obviously not to the degree that some people I see where they're, like obsessed with it every second of every day, but
yeah,
it's something that should be in the forefront of your mind. You know,
because your body is a temple, and like if you just like garbage, like there's the physical aspect of that and there's the spiritual aspect of that. um the spiritual obviously being really important, but like and we're embodied souls, so like that also plays into it. Like I mean, I've always actually wanted to ask, like, do you have more soul if you're fat? Like if you're obese, like do you just
no.
have more soul because like do you get less soul because you're getting muscle instead of fat, or like, you know what I mean, like the amount of space, like does that matter? um that would be something I'd like to ask a theologian. I know it's like just for fun, but like there is like part of me that actually wants to know the answer. um so just to address Welp, this channel continue to confound me with the ads. I have had 2 Dune movie ads in a row, and one about legalizing marijuana in my state. What is Mr. Papist trying to tell me about drug use?
Did you
Don't do
miss that
drugs.
part? We had a whole like 20-minute speech. I went on a spiel. I got on a soapbox and was like, smoke weed or else.
Yeah. I mean, like, I get paid money for that, but like, obviously, don't do that stuff. Like,
Oh my.
that's the weird thing where it's like, okay, well, you tell me this, and it's like, okay, well, that sucks. Don't do it. Like,
If you come in and he's in like a Rastafarian hat, it's all over.
oh
Just
my God.
just leave. Never come back.
Let's see. But we also. So, but we also know that if that occurred, Father Eric would be there and permit himself to die before he saw any harm come to the Blessed Sacrament. Yeah, so like he definitely comes as one. So like this, when it comes to times when he promotes the Eucharist, he promotes something from Formed. I forget exactly what it's called. But basically, the first part of that series shows a reenactment of what happened in New York, where two priests ran into a burning building to bring out the Eucharist that was in the tabernacle, and they were all ashen and everything. And actually, like the firefighters thought they died, but they came out with the Eucharist in hand. And nowadays a lot of people just think they're crazy. Like when you're thinking about it, it's like, oh well, what is like they actually I think they say it in the video. They're like, all right, well, what could, like, the firefighters asking what could they be doing? I'm like, no, the firefighters know, because they're all Catholic. Like we're
Right.
talking about like if it's during that time, we're talking about Irish, the Irish and Italians immigrants, which predominantly like showcase, like we're within the government agencies of the fire department and police. No, they knew exactly what those priests were running in there for. So
Yeah. No, like I told you the other day, we had our deacon um, dropped a communion host and ate it right off the ground, like not even thinking about it, and it was like good.
yeah, like
We
that's what you
believe this.
want. Like that's what you want. You want your priests to show reverence to God. And like we're just so starved for that. And it's like so annoying, because like we just want instances of priests to do what we're told they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So let's see. All right, Mark, I'm just gonna let you know I'm not gonna read all that. I'm not gonna make it too theological. I don't think the answer's wrong. I'm just gonna
Yes,
I
there's a balance.
yes
100%.
yes, there's balance.
I eat cheeseburgers and work
I
out.
don't
It's those two things.
have that on me right now, because I was wearing it the other day, like
Oh my
right
goodness.
after on All Saints Day. Like, yeah, I guess you didn't see it, but yeah, it's a video
You
of that.
sent me a picture of it. I saw the picture.
um, yes, yeah, that was my point with like seeing a priest that like they're not gluttonous, like they're not just fat and they haven't worked out, and like because that would actually be a combination of probably gluttony and sloth. Um, like they're not prioritizing the well-being of their body, so they're just like letting it fatten up, and they're not consuming as much as they should be. They're consuming more. And so all right, so like let's get off the fat people thing, because unfortunately, like here's the other thing is like the like I guess I don't want to go down that route in terms of the LGSs. um when it comes to the LGSs, you said that local game stores, that's what that means. You said that they tend to be more conservative than the people who they let in, right?
The owners, yeah,
Yeah.
generally speaking.
And so like what would make them like I guess like is it the fact that like for a lot of them it's just that they're the ones that pay money? Like there's just no conservative push to win these people over?
I don't know. It's it's complicated because a lot of the times the people that will work at game stores are people that are very dead end. It's like I'm wanting to work a job for like $9-10 an hour at the front counter of a game store, and I'll be there till I'm like in my 40s, and it's wild. I think it's also too, it reflects what art has become. I mean, people that are taking in art and becoming massive fans of it. I mean, I don't know anybody who's like a fan of like think about like Steven Universe is really big, and that's very feminized and
What's
potentially
Steven Universe?
you don't want to know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's it's a kid's cartoon that's very LGBT suggestive,
Gotcha.
if not outright like stated. Um, and they have a lot of huge fans of that. I mean, Has Been Hotel is literally takes place in hell,
Yeah.
following a lesbian protagonist. So yeah, I mean, a lot of
Which we,
pop
by the
culture.
way, found out one of my daughter's classmates was watching.
Yeah. Oh, I don't
Fifth
doubt it. And
grader.
it's supposed
A
to be for
fifth
like
grader.
adults, but I mean, it's a cartoon,
Yeah.
There's
It
going to be
must be okay.
kids. Right. And right. And I don't particularly like when I do comics or animation or writing, I don't necessarily do it with kids in mind, but you always have to know that a kid is going to pick up that book
Yep.
and look through it. You can't just yeah, no, Mark is correct. Steven Universe is a mess. I'm gonna leave it at that. Yeah, it's a lot of there's a lot of problems with that, and well, and it's hard to navigate that minefield of kids entertainment. It's just that's a video for another day. Hey, I've got a 4-year-old daughter. Help.
Well, yeah, because like for a lot of my kids, like because they range from like 11 to 7 months. So the idea that like we unfortunately did one thing. Like we had Disney Plus at the time, and we watched the new DuckTales, and it was for the most part good. It wasn't great,
Yeah.
but then they brought in a same-sex couple like out of nowhere, and I was just like, okay, that totally shocked us. We did not
Yeah.
expect that whatsoever, but we were watching it with the kids, like in
Right.
tandem, and we were like, okay, and we addressed it, and so it was, um, yeah, like we, yeah, we did have South Park, like that's the
Yeah.
like we know not all cartoons are created equal, um, but yeah, like we've been really surprised by some of the things that at the Catholic school that we go to, just what the parents allow their kids to read and watch. And it's like they just don't care. Like not all of them by any means, but like a lot of them. Like so much so that you're just kind of like, okay, well, I actually don't want my kids to be around you right now because they're at an age where they can be in, like you can influence them horrendously. But yeah, that's another topic for another day too. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Where to draw the line with kid shows? Because man, I'm trying to figure that one out. That's crazy.
Bluey
I'm on the
Cindy.
I'm on the young end. Well, I'm on the young end of parenting. I've got a 3-year-old, almost 4, and a 2-month-old. So it's kind of I'm not really dealing with it. But yeah,
Okay, it is not the best, but
Genndy Tartakovsky is amazing.
Phil Lamar is one of the best voice actors ever. So he he's the guy who does Samurai Jack, and
Yeah, no, the animation guy for that, Genndy Tartakovsky, is like one of the best animators that's ever lived.
I love the fact that you complimented what I said. Like I
Yeah,
talked about the voice actor, and then you talked about the cartoonist, like the guy
yeah,
designing the art. Ah, okay. So like that's great. Um,
yeah. Go look that dude up at some point. But
so yeah, just to like maybe like 5 minutes just to wrap it up.
yeah. I gotta get run.
Yeah, me too. And so um I guess like do you have anything in particular that you want to point out as like Catholics? Like I guess like my thing like what yeah, I guess my thing is like the idea of real like conservative or religious or anti-enlightenment as I've been pushing lately. Um this idea of like getting into the popular space. Like it makes no sense that like Catholics can't do that. And there's an attempt at doing that right now with Luce. And I like that video where I was dressed up as Rengoku. Like we talked about that. but it does, and that's where a lot of these ideas came from for like, what ended up evolving into like Saint Anthony, like you doing that, and then obviously the angels with guns.
Oh, that's
But
coming next. What next live
right,
stream?
but it's this idea of like we're not attacking that space and treating it like a space of evangelization. We're
Right.
treating it like, no, that's
Like
their
something to be scared of. A lot of people.
yeah, like I don't like the fact that like my kids can't like I don't teach, like I think I may have talked about this before, but I don't teach my kids Magic the Gathering. Like I'll play it with my friends, but I don't play it with them, because even though it's an incredibly smart game, it's an incredibly good game, that would help them like understand how to think in a particular way, in a good way, given the mechanisms within the game, like the stack, for example. I know you've played, but like the stack, for example, and just understanding order of operations. And for like quite literally, like some of my kids are learning the order of operations in math right now, so like that's something that they could benefit from. But like the problem is that the people who play the game right now, and like how the company is moving the game, is so left leaning and so like bad to what's happening like in our culture, that it's like I can't risk it, because I can just imagine like they're 20 and they've played this game, and then they go and play with someone else, and then they get hooked up. Like that was the connection, that they connected with someone in college, to then go into something that could highly influence how they think. Right? Like, do you get what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%.
And I'm not saying that that's like something like to be scared of every little thing. It's just like you were talking about, there's a certain culture that makes people no, it's not.
It's just an art
Some
form.
anime is, but like anime as a medium is not. Um but the yeah, like you get what I'm saying? Like it's just
Yeah.
the idea of like they can't, I don't want to like allow that to happen. Like there are other games that they can do that can mimic that. But like Magic, like I said, I just think is very good, excuse me, from a logical perspective, um, but not necessarily with the way the company is moving. It's like the worst, one of the best games in the world is owned by one of the worst companies. So that's
Yeah.
unfortunate. So where can we buy this game to support you? Look at that!
Ah, that's
Look at
awesome.
that!
Hey, so right now, we're switching over from Shopify to Amazon, and we're going through the approval process. So I've got 2 books, and then there is a PDF that we're going to put up there as well. So, and you'll be getting. I think I have one of them in here actually. But yeah, no. We'll get on a stream next time, and I'll share all that stuff with you. We're just switching everything over. We're actually working on kind of a big project in the background, but we'll tell you about that stuff later on.
Yeah, but like I think, yeah, that's cool. So let's see. Should adult men be watching cartoons? They can. It depends.
Depends on the cartoon.
Yeah, it
It's
depends
just
on the
another
cartoon.
art form.
Yep. A random question. What are the books in the top shelf? Oh. The top one is the 1962 missile, and then the black one, that's the missile, and then this is the Summa.
So I told somebody, I said the Catholic Church got new missiles, and the guy was like, they had old missiles, and he was like super concerned.
Well, I just found out. So like here, one second.
He's gone. Everybody comment about him.
Yeah. I just got like, I found this in like one of my like Catholic. I bought it at a garage sale thing. This is a 1965 missile. So this is like the missile in between uh the Novus Ordo and the traditional Latin Mass.
Yeah, it's not intercontinental, but it can hit small islands off the coast.
What? What are you talking about?
It's an 1985 missile. It's not a modern missile. I'm being dumb.
Oh, okay. You're being, yeah. So, but like, this is like, there's a time that my music director and I talked about the 1965 missile for a second. That is very different than the Novus Ordo. Like I said, I go to the Novus Ordo. I used to go to the TLM. That's an example of me having the missile, because I have it. But I didn't know about this. This was like, and it just like threw me off when I found it. I was like, holy crap, I actually have this. So let me just finish one question.
Yeah, sure.
Never know. Let's see. Never know start can happen. One night you're playing MTG at 3 a.m. in the dorm. Next thing you know, you're married 15 years with 5 kids.
That's true.
So yeah, that was something that Magic the Gathering was a thing that my wife and I did in the dorms, like in the lounges, because Michigan State has these huge lounges in the dorm room, and we would play there and we just talk about life and whatever. And so like it was a bonding thing that we did. And so but let's see. One of the best games in the world. You mean Dragon Age Fail Guard? No, I'm just gonna no. Gosh, my keyboard is not my friend. Never know what can happen. I gotta give him that easy to end the stream. Oh yeah, yeah. Otherwise we will Midwest goodbye this for another hour. So okay, I've noticed that, and I'm gonna try to not do that anymore. That I do that, and so I'm gonna try to not do that. What I'm doing now is I'm going through chat, and then once I go through chat, we're done. So,
just Irish goodbye. I'll just drop
I do
off
know.
screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Have a fish day.
Oh my gosh. Okay, guys, we're gonna be done.
Bye, guys.
Yeah. So, okay, thank you for watching. We will be posting it. Watch out for my community post, because I will actually link the Amazon to that, and then you can buy it through the Amazon link. And this is going to be for this is great timing, obviously, for Christmas, but look in the community post, you'll see it. And
I'll send y'all signed artwork with it, like originals. Anybody who buys it on this, I'll send y'all signed originals, because I've got a bunch of cool images that I can send over.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is, if you haven't liked this, please do. Yes, but we were in the middle of a conversation. So before we get derailed completely again, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later. Or we'll talk to you guys later.